Okay. Today's daf is daf Chav Ches, and hopefully we'll do Chav Tes as well. We're holding on the bottom. The Mishnah had said just a couple of days ago. The Mishnah had said, what was it? What was the Mishnah again? Losing my mind. No, on the bottom of Chav Dalet Beis, yeah.
But the Mishnah.
No, we had gone. Yeah, oh, thank you.
So it said you don't put women in the street.
Yeah, all right. So we were talking there about the halachas of how do you handle certain types of halachas on Chalamayit was what we were discussing. And we try to minimize how much public mourning is actually happening. And one of the things we said was we don't put the meat to the beer holding the body in the street in order to not make sure people aren't doing too much hesped, as well as not putting women in there ever, really, even on regular days of Chol. Mipnei HaKavod meant the pashtus meant because of the nida. So woman was a nida and there was blood, it would be like a bizayin shtickle because the tachrichin are white, and therefore people would notice. It says in the Gemara. Okay, last line. It's only referring to a woman who died in childbirth, where there will be a lot of blood. If there's a lot of blood, then you'll have a problem of regular women, even if they're nida, do it. It's not a problem. But Belazar Amar, no. Afilu shar noshim, even regular women, even non-nida women, meaning all women, basically.
Old women are usually not a puzzle. Women who die don't have nida anymore. So that shot is a little.
Well, yeah, and a chanami, but regardless, I'm saying the point is that.
I'm saying you could learn that it doesn't have to do with nida. It just has to do with women. It's just not.
Yeah, but it's difficult. It's difficult to say that mipnei hakovid, unless it's a sneeze issue. I mean, that could be a different issue. But even there, if they're in an aron, then it's.
You even said mipnei hakovid about their dress being torn.
So that was more of a sneeze issue. Yeah, in a chanami. Okay. But either way, the pashtus over here is of elachaya, childbirth, and again, the pashtus is because of the blood. Right. She clearly didn't die in childbirth, right? So it says she died there, was buried there. So you see some kvura. So they didn't push it out into the street. It happened right away. So to all women, it should be done that way. Born Rebbe Lazar, Af Miriam ben Ishka, Miriam died ben Ishika, meaning Af Miriam. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu died ben Ishika. And we'll see in a moment exactly what Misas Neshika is, vis-a-vis Kares, vis-a-vis how one's supposed to die or could die. So we see that even Miriam died ben Neshika, Asya Sham mi Moshe, meaning the pasuk by Moshe says, I think I wrote the pasuk, V'yomas Sham Moshe evet Hashem be'eretz Moav al pi Hashem. They understand al pi Hashem to mean ben Neshika. So too, they make there's Sham with Miriam that she also died ben Neshika. Upmipnei ma loy nemar bo al pi Hashem. So why doesn't it say al pi Hashem by her? Why did you have to learn it through Gzeir Shava? Why not just say al pi Hashem by Miriam? Mipnei shignai hadav amro, to have it sound like that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did it al pi Hashem, that the drush is going to be minashika with a woman. It's not sneeze to have it that way. So therefore they didn't want to use that pasuk. So we did it through Gzeir. Amr Ami lama nismacha misas Miriam leparshas paraduma. Why was misas Miriam juxtaposed with the parsha paraduma? Just like Para Aduma is mechaper, Taisus here points out it's not really mechaper, right? It's metaher. It's not mechaper. He says it's going on the Maisa Egel, how the first Para Aduma was mechaper, right? What does it say? Sheyavai ha'em v'yitonef palterin shamela v'aymer hamela v'yimay, and it'll clean up for the child. So too the Para Aduma cleans up for the. So af misos and shel tzadikim is mechaperes. There's a part over here they say from Soloveitchik. I think Soloveitchik says, why do we you find two things mentioned by tzaddikim. You find that we also the four taniyos, we have four of them. One of them is for Gedalia ben Achikam. So you have three of them for the Korban and Bayis, and one of them is for tzaddik. So he said, the Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah, that's to teach you that misos and shel tzaddikim is kshakol like the Korban Abayis, right? Meaning that whatever. So Soloveitchik says he uses that Gemara and this Gemara to explain why is it that we mention the Asara Haruge Malchus on Tisha B'Av and on Yom Kippur. Like, what's the shaykhs between Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av? Really, the days have nothing to do with each other. I mean, yes, the only thing they share is the Inuyim, but the Inuyim are completely for different reasons. So he says is that it's basically two Gemaras, meaning by mentioning the Asara Aruge Malchus on Yom Kippur, we're bringing this Gemara that it's Misas and Shadikim is like a kapara, and that's what we say on Yom Kippur. Whereas on Tisha B'av, which is more about Churban, so he says that's what we mentioned over there, based on the Gemara Rosh Hashanah, which says that Misas and Shadikim is Shakol ke Churban Avais. Okay, continues the Gemara Tan Rabban and Mes Pitain. We're going to discuss the sugya of kares, right? We know kares is a certain person in the Torah, a person is chayav kares number. Karis, we always say, oh, he's going to get life cut short, or he's going to die without children. And there's a lot of different opinions as to exactly what it is. But certainly, in terms of dying early, that's one of the opinions as to what Karis is. The Gemara is going to discuss what different methods of dying are considered, or potentially could be considered Karis. Tanarabanan, Mace pit oim, a person dies suddenly. Zuhi misa chatufa. This is called a misa chatufa. We're going to see a bunch of terms here. Taisus himself says, I don't really know. Taisus says chatufa lo yadano ma'ishnahu minole. The different lashonos we're using in the Gemara now are going to sort of not really explain anything different from the other, but the point is each one of them are on some level a reference to the fact that one was taken early, right? So if a person dies suddenly, zuhi misa chatufa. Chalo yoim echad. If a person is sick for one day and then dies, umeis zuhi misa dechufa. Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel Omer Zuhi Misas Magefa. He argues and says no, that would be called a Misas Magefa, and he brings a pasuk. Emar pasuk says Ben Adam Hinani Lekech Mimcha Es Machmad Eicha Ben Magefa. Talking about Cheskel. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm going to take your Machmad Einecha, your wife, Ben Magefa. Says over there the pasuk afterward. Duksiv Adaber Ala Amba Boiker. Cheskel spoke in the morning, but Thomas and she died at night. So you see, one day passed, and then she died. That's called, and it was referred to as Magefa. Therefore, that's his opinion. But okay, fine. Tanakama says Shnei Yamim Umeis. So what's 2 days and then becomes sick and then dies? Zuhi Misa Dechuya. Gimel is called Ge'ara. Arba is called Nizifa, which is like a very similar lesson that we saw earlier about Nidui. It's a very light form of Chayr. Chamisha Zuhi Misa Kol Adam. So basically, what we just said was that a person gets sick and dies him suddenly, or 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4 days and dies. That's all called on some level a sudden death that we would call that such a death could be called the type of karis. And we'll see exactly what the tzir for that exists. However, if a person is sick for 5 days, that's already called like a normal hashka of a regular type of death, and that doesn't necessarily there, and that can't be karis. A person who's sick for 5 days is already in the derech hateva of normal life, for that's called a regular death. Amr of Chanan, Mikra, what's the pasuk to support this idea that once you have 5 days afterwards is not called karis? Hein kirvu yamecha lamos. All right, talking about Hashem, talking to Moshe Rabbeinu about the days that he's going to be dying soon. He says, Hein kirvu yamecha lamos, your days of coming to an end, your days of death are coming. So hein chad, right? Hein is chad. We'll see in a minute why. Kirvu, which is a plural, trey. Yomecha, another plural, trey. So you have 5, right? Trey, chamish, you have 5. So therefore you see 5 days, and therefore after that it's a normal misa. Hein chad, how do we know that hein means chad? Shechein b'loshen yavoni, kairin la'achas hein, which is very interesting to find that the Torah...
That's true. The Greek word
is hin. Yeah. So, but the point is, it's just I find it interesting that the pasuk is going to be using that Greek.
I mean, it has to be an asmachta.
Yeah, obviously.
Say the Torah is using Greek.
There's no Greek people then speaking it. Yeah. Meis chamishim shana zuhi misas kares. So now we're getting into the. Let's say that live. There's something called kares deshani, and there's something called kares diyami. Yimei, right? So kares deshani means dying in the early years, and the kares diyomi is what we just referenced before about whether one's sick for 1, 2, 3, or 4 days, or versus 5 days, up to 4 days and including 4 days. That's kares diyomi. Once you had 5 days, that's already not kares. And then there's kares deshani, which means you're dying at an early decade. So meis b'chamishim shana zuhi misas kares. The person dies at the age of 50. And we'll see in the Gemara in a minute that this 50 does not mean only 50. It means a person dies between 50 and 60. That's called kares, and we'll see why it specifically spoke it this way in a minute. Zuhi misas kares. Chamishim u'shtayim shana. This is a Gemara that we brought up to Tainus a little bit. Zuhi misasa shel Shmuel Ramasi. This is Shmuel Navi's misa. He died at 52 years old, and therefore it mentions that a person dies at 52. That's not called kares because he's dying like the misa of Shmuel Navi. Shishim zuhi misa b'dei shemayim. So here there's different girsas over here. Misa b'dei shemayim. Normally we use that phrase in a somewhat similar way to the way we would use kares, that it's like a punishment. But the Rishonim speak out over here. I think there's a Yaakov Emden also over here. Misa b'dei shemayim here. This just means normal misa b'dei shemayim, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes someone's life because it's the time for him to die. Meaning once a person hits 60, according to this opinion, there's no more kares in terms of like dying early, right? What's the pasuk to say that 60, once you hit 60, dying at that point no longer is kares? Dichsev tavoy bekelach eli kever. Kever, right? So it says over here that you shall bekelach means like as a zaken, old. You'll come in. You'll come to him in the kever when you are kelach. Bekelach. The Gemara says the gematria shis and havi. If you just do the math, 8, 38, 58, and 2 is 60. Fine. Yeah. So you have 60, right? So you have shiva. So 60 is no longer kares. Shiva.
I have 10 more months.
Oh, you should mitzvah Hashem. You should have much more than 10 more months. Shivim Seva, 70 years old is called Seva, Mipnei Seva Takum, right? And Shmoinim is called Gvuros. These are just giving us definitional terms.
Today people even to the 90s.
Yeah, mitzvah Shem. So 60, once you hit 60, there's no longer Kares. Once you hit 70, you call the Seva. Once you hit 80, you call Gvuros. Tichsiv, like we all say in Shabbos morning, Shemesh Shana, then the Gvuros Shmoinim Shana. So you see that 70, well, really not 70, you see that 80 is called Gvuros. Amir Rabbah. So Rabbah comes to explain really what the Brisa was really saying over here. Mechamishim v'yad shishim shana, meaning an even 52. That's the way he understands it, right? So from 50 to 60 years, if a person dies during those years, that's considered an early death. That would be considered. Now, it doesn't mean that it's muchach if you die during that time that you died of kares. It just means it's possible that it's because of kares. Mm-hmm. But if a person dies before 50 or after 60, that is not called kares. Now, the Rishonim speak out that 60 as well is not included. So really it means 50 to 59. That's how it comes out. Zuhi misas kares. The haidalei chashav lahu. So how come the Brisa didn't mention it that way? It just said 50. Why didn't it say what Rabbi just said? Mishum the chavodah shel Shmuel Ramasi, and that's how he explains the Brisa. The Brisa is saying 50 is kares, meaning from 50 to 60, but not 52 because that's Shmuel Ramasi. What it really meant to say is I didn't want to say 50 to 60 because then people would think that maybe they'll speak lashon hara about Shmuel Navi. Rav Yosef ki havi bar shisen, when he turned 60 years old, avad lahu yom tavla rabbanon. Many people bring a raya from here to making Shechianus by your birthday. There's a Chavaz Yair. There's a big grade on this. Amar nafki limi kares, and he was very happy. He made a suda. He says, I'm now no longer punished for. And again, what that basically means is that no one is chayiv kares unless they deserve it. So Rav Yosef obviously felt on some level there may have been an avera once, maybe twice in his life. He thought of something, whatever it was. He had obviously a feeling about himself that he was chayiv kares, and he seems like he was making a yom tavla rabbanon. That he was able to. You need a big party when you turn 60. Mitzvah Shem. Amar le Abaye. So Abaye said, you're right. The kares of years you've gotten, right. You still die at this point because the Yami.
Less than 5 days.
Because the Yami minafak mar, meaning maybe even after 60, one can die from kares, but the kares won't be a year's cut short, but the ofen that you're dying could be called kares. If you're dying quickly, suddenly. But you're right. But you know what? You got half already, so that's not so bad. It's not so bad. Rav Huna died very suddenly. The Rabbanon were nervous and maybe died from kares. So Zuga de Mehadayev, either Zuga was his name or it was a pair of Talmidei Chachamim from the city of the Hadayev. They said no. They explained the Brisa as follows: the whole concept is only shelo higil legvuras. About higil legvuras, if he got to 80 years old, zuhi misas nishika. So what comes out over here is that from 0 to 50, that's just regular normal death. The person can die early now, but Kadosh Baruch Hu takes them. It is what it is. From 50 to 59, that dying, no matter how you die and whatever, that could potentially be kares. From 60 to 79. A person could die b'kares only b'kares of shani, and once you hit 80, at that point there's no more kares of shani or of yami. It doesn't make a difference at that point. At that point, anyone who dies suddenly after 80 years old is called misas nishika, like Miriam and Moshe Rabbeinu.
There's something a little strange about the idea that if somebody's in his 30s and he's a murderer and a fornicator and whatever, and then he dies, we say for sure he didn't die of kares. Because he's less than 50.
So it's hard to. Well, I think it's important to draw a contrast between the idea that when we're discussing kares, what we mean to say is that this is not the only reason why. Meaning, a person can die early and it's not called kares. We wouldn't call it because of a chiyuv kares. Maybe the person his chuyos have just completely.
Let's say he was died of kares. Meaning he did all the things that affect kares. He died in his 30s.
You're saying a different thing. You're saying it'll come out that a person will deserve to die significantly earlier, but because of our rule, he's going to get extra life.
something. Yeah.
Could be.
It's just strange.
Karis, they say, is a chesed. Karis is a chesed that Kadosh Baruch Hu gives a person, because really, if they would take him when Sof Yamav, the punishment that'll have to endure will be significantly worse.
I think maybe what I'm trying to say is this is the usual karis, 50 and on. But if somebody's really bad, maybe they'd get karis at 30.
So listen, it's not muchach in the Gemara. It's not muchach in the Gemara. But it is mashma that, I mean, I think it's a fair diak to say that he's saying it starts at 50.
Right. But they're more clear that it ends at 60.
60 or 80. Yeah.
That's clear.
True.
But, to say that somebody who's such a Russia, it can't be worse than 50, that's just the usual. Okay.
Yeah, no, I hear that.
Okay.
I guess the argument would sort of go that, like, in Derech HaTeva, making it to 50 is already an accomplishment. Meaning, if you've gotten to 50, that means there's been some sort of a hashgacha that says you've made it through. Certainly in the times of the Gemara, when life expectancy was probably not as high as it is today. Let's say with modern medicine, making it to 50 was a pretty big accomplishment. Making it to 60 was really, those last 10 years were the years where you were like, well, if I'm going to have a real life, yeah. So we'll see. Interesting Gemara. And one great Gemara here after another here. Amar Rava says a very chashuv thing. How long you'll live. Bnei, your bunny, your children, or your nachas from your kids, whatever it is. And your parnasa loy b'schusa talia milsa. Those things are not dependent upon your schusa. Ella b'maz talia milsa. How does Rava know this? The Rabba v'Rav Chizda. Who are Rabba v'Rav Chizda to Rava? Rabba we know is his Rebbe. So obviously he would have an intimate relationship with Rabba. But Rav Chizda was the Shver. Rav Chizda was his father-in-law. And since Rav Chizda was his father-in-law, that means that Rava had like a first row seats to both of these people. And what you couldn't find two people who had a different life. Travayu, except one area in Torah, right? Travayu, Rabban, and Tzadiki have it. They were both big tzaddikim and big Tam Chacham. Mar Matzli v'Asi Mitra, Umar Matzli Mitra. That's the barometer. No pun intended. If a person wants to know if a person's a tzaddik, if he davens for rain and it rains, he's a tzaddik. Rav Chizda chaye tishin v'tartin shnin. Rav Chizda lived to be 92 years old.
Wow.
So that means Rav to see his father-in-law to the old age of 92. I don't know when Rava died.
Noam Chomsky is 93 years old. I just looked it up and I was thinking, he's due to go. Yeah. He annoys me whenever I read anything that he wrote. I say, what is
he's gotten more insane in the years.
Yeah, it's true. He's a good linguist.
In your lane. Rabba Chaya Arboin, but Rabba only lived 40. Right? And I think this Gemara came up, I believe it was in Tainus, talked about Rabba, and
it was his Gemara?
No, there was a Gemara that talked about how, my brain is, where one lived to 40.
No, wasn't there, isn't that the Gemara that talks about Eliyahu's kids were cursed? One of them was cursed.
Yeah. But it was something like that. Yeah. And he would have lived even less, something like that. Yeah.
What Masechta was that?
It was Tainus. I think it was Tainus. Well, maybe it was. Then maybe it wasn't Tainus.
Could it be Rosh Hashanah?
No. It's either Megillah or Tainus.
Then I should remember, but I forgot.
Okay. Bei Rav Chizda, the children of Rav Chizda, Shisin Hiluli, they had 60 weddings, 60 smachos in their family. Bei Rabba, Shisin Tichli, they had 60 tragedies. Bei Rav Chizda, Samida Lechalbi, they used to give the highest type of flour and food to the dogs even. Veloy Mitavi, and they didn't even want it. They had so much that even the dogs were eating so good. Whereas Bei Rabba, Nahama de Sa'ari Le'inshi, the barley bread was what people ate, and they veloy mishtakach, and they had very little of it. The point is that when it came to these three things, mazel was what was gairim, not schusim, because clearly schusim, they both had schusim.
We were saying the most important things in life, your schusim are going to...
Well, if the most important things in life mean the things that are about this life, then the most important things in this life are totally
your parnasa, your children.
No, obviously those things are really important in order to be able to have, but yeah. So the Rava says, "Honey tlas mili boyu kamishmaya." I dive into the following three things. Tarti yavili, two of them I received chadol yavli, and one of them I did not. Chuchma said the Rafuna. I wanted to be a chacham like Rafuna. The usrei, the wealth, the Rav Chizda, the yavli. Those two things Hashem blessed me with. Meaning, maybe it could be he inherited Rav Chizda's wealth, right? If he was a son-in-law, maybe he got whatever. But Yavli and I had that bracha. However, an v'senusa de Rabba bar Ravuna, the anova of Rabba bar Ravuna lo Yavli, I never had that. Obviously, that's inherently I mean, for someone to say I never had the anava, maybe he did have the anava. Meaning, maybe that's the statement. The statement is he did have the anava, and he's saying I didn't have the anava. Either way, Rav Sa'orim, they changed the gears here to a samach, but it's basically the same thing. Rav Sa'orim Achua de Rava. He was the brother of Rava, Havi Yosef Kama de Rava, and he was sitting in front of Rava's brother. Chazir he saw that he was dozing off, but the dozing off he wasn't because he was dying. Right? Rava said to him, Lema Lemar Deloy L'tzar, tell this Malach HaMavos over here, do me a favor, stop bothering me. I mean, this is what Rava said to his brother, the Rav Sa'orim. Amrlei Mar Lav Shushvinahu. So he back to his brother Rav. I don't understand. You're not a shushvin by him, meaning you're not only enough that you can just sort of tell him to leave you alone. Amrlei, he says no. Kivan the imser mazla, once the fate is sealed, is lo yeshgach bi. He's not going to listen to me, listen to you. Amrlei, he says, okay, so it seems you're going to die. Litz chazili mar, come to me in a dream after you pass. He's chazile, so he came to him in a dream. Amrlei havale lamar tzar, did you have any pain while you died? Amrlei, he said, ki ribda de kusilto, it was like the prick of a needle, like when you get a shot. A little pain, but nothing crazy. Rava Havi Yosef Kama de Rav Nachman, and it's got to assume this story happened beforehand, right? Because it just seems like a story that Rava would have first. I don't know. It seems funny to me that if all of a sudden Rava's brother's coming to him in the exact same way, it's hard to say which one happened first. Rava Havi Yosef Kama de Rav Nachman, Chazia to Kaminam, same story. Amrlei Lema Mar Deloy L'tzar. Tell this Malach HaMavos not to bother me. Amrlei Mar, Rav Nachman said to him, Lav Adam Choshevu. Sorry, Rava said to Rav Nachman, Lav Adam Choshevu. Are you not an Adam Choshev that you can, sort of get him to stop bothering? Amrlei Man Choshev, Man Sapin, Man Rikia. Meaning, Klapi the Malach HaMavos. No one has chashivas. No one's going to be able to tell him what to do. If it's your time, it's your time. Amrlei, if that's the case, Liz Chazili Mar, at least come to me in a dream. Rav Nachman came to him in a dream, and Amrlei, he asked him, Lemar Tzara, when you died, was it painful? Amrlei, it's kimiyishchal bin so mechalva. It's like taking out a hair from milk. It was very simple and easy. The Amar Li Hakadosh Baruch Hu Zilba Hu Alma Kad Haves, and yet, despite the fact that it was such an easy thing, had Hakadosh Baruch Hu said to go back into this world as you were and do it again, Loi be'ina, I would not do it. Did nafish be asuse, because this was a very bad experience, and I prefer not to. Even though it wasn't painful, the experience was not an enjoyable experience. Rebbe Lazar have a ka'achil truma. Rebbe Lazar was eating truma. It's chazile, and the Malach HaMavos coming to take him. Amrlei, he said to the Malach HaMavos, truma ka'achilna v'lav kaideshikri. You're going to make me die, and therefore I'm going to be matama the truma. That's going to be a problem. So chofali shaita, so he was able to get a couple more years out of that. And obviously, he must have walked around with truma no matter where he went.
That's a good trick.
Yeah. Again, it only works, I guess, if you're a kayan.
Right.
Yeah. Rav Sheshes is chazile b'shuka. He was in the shuk. The wife of the kayan. There you go. Right. Sheshes is chazile b'shuka. He was out in the marketplace when the Malach HaMavos wanted to take him. Amrlei b'shuka kebehema. You're going to take me in the shuk like a behema. Isa legabesa. Come to my house. And he was able to sort of get away from him for that little bit. Rav Ashi is chazile b'shuka. He was found in the shuk, and he didn't say the same thing. I guess he had no problem with behema. He said, Amrlei isra. Give me another 30 days. Let me get my affairs in order. So I can chazer over my learning. The Amrisu, like we know, it says up there, Ashri Mishabola Kanva Talmud biyada, that a person should arrive there with his learning in his hand. So beyond plus, and on the 30th day, right? Asa, he came. Amr Lay, and he said, My kulei hai. The Malach HaMavos says to him, enough, let's go. It's time to go. Kadach geragli de Barnosan, you're holding up Barnosan, who's supposed to be the Nasi after you. Ve'ein malchus neigos ve'chaverta. And we don't allow the one who's in charge to take any moment away from the one who's coming after him. Right? Rashi says, "Meet Nasi." He's going to become the Gadladar. It's his time to become the Gadladar. It's your time to pass. Rav Chizda Rav Chizda, the Malach HaMavos was trying to take, and he couldn't do it, because we saw before Rav Chizda had a lot of mazel, right? Not because I take that back, because he was learning a lot of Torah.
He never stopped.
He never stopped learning Torah. So the Malach HaMavos went out to the house.
Which implies he never slept. I mean, most people.
Even while he was sleeping, he was learning, right, whatever it is. Right. So he hung out by the porch, basically, like by the wood porch of the house of Rav. I don't think it's the Rav's house, or it's the Bey Rav of the rabbis' homes. Poka Arzo, and the porch snapped or something like that. The shosek, and in that moment, Rav Chizda just for a moment stopped learning. And the Malach HaMavos was able to take him. Rabbi Chia the Malach HaMoavus couldn't even get close to him. Yoim echad idmilei ke'anya, he appeared like a poor person. Asit tarif abava, he knocked on the door. Amarlei apikli ripsi, he said, go bring me some bread, please, I'm hungry. Afikulei, so he brought it for him. Amarlei, and he said, V'lav kamerachim mar a'anya, you're being merachim on this ani that I just appeared to you as Hahu Gavra, meaning the Malach HaMoavus, meaning he showed him who he is. Amai loika merachim mar, why are you not having Rachmanas on the Malach HaMoavus? Let him just take you already. Galilei, he revealed himself to be the Malach HaMoavus. Achvi leishuta denura, and like a pitchfork basically came out, like a lightning rod. Amti le nafshe, and so Reb Chia finally acquiesced to be taken. Last Mishnah in the paragraph. Chav Ches Amud Beis. The Mishnah is talking here. It's hard to understand the Metzias because we don't do it nowadays. But back in the times of the Gemara, and times of the Mishnayos, women, the way they would mourn, a little bit different than the way men would mourn. Men would mourn hesped. We were sort of talking about this yesterday as we were leaving. A certain stoic nature to the way men would mourn, whereas women, they were more, they would wail and cry. And, a little bit.
They do Yalalos.
Yalalos, right? Yeah. Listen, there are many other customs, even outside of Yiddishkeit, where women, they'll scream, they'll make noises. So in those times, what they would do is they would come together and read poetry or read like sort of very inspiring types of words to get people to cry. And there's different ways to do it. There was something called to be ma'aneh, then there was something called kina. So we'll go through the Mishnah exactly which levels were mutter at what point, because remember we're talking about cholamayid. Nashim b'mayid ma'anais, they're allowed to read these psukim normally and cry normally. They're not allowed to clap their hands. By clapping, that was like a higher level of more serious type of avelus. Rabbi Shmuel Aimer hasmuchos metapchas. No, if they're close to the mita, then we allow them to do it. They're just not far away. Again, it's all about kavod yatim. Uvrosh chadashim b'Chanukah u'b'Purim ma'anos. If it's on Rosh Chodesh, Chanukah and Purim, meaning over there it's a little bit less of a concern. It's not a yontiv mamish. So since it's not mamish shemayid, therefore you could even be ma'anos u'metapchas. And ubizeh, meaning on Cholamayid and Rosh Chodesh and Purim and Chanukah, and all of them, you cannot do mekaynanos like a kina. We'll see exactly what that means in the Gemara. Nikvar hameis, what if the mace dies? Then now you no longer have the ability to do anything really once it's buried, because the level of seriousness is gone. Meaning you could still be masked with someone after they're buried. I mean, you could still do whatever, but the basic heterim on cholamayid would not be would be gone. Ezehu inoi. So what is inoi? Shekulon oinois ke'achas. That's when they all are reading it sort of together. Whereas kina is she'achas medaberes. One is saying it maybe in an inspiring way. But kulon oinois achreha. Maybe that's where it comes from. The lashon of inoi is because they're answering. Shenemar. He's referring to Inoi, don't ask me how. The Isha Reusa Kina, and a neighbor is with Kina. So you see that it's with another woman, that's called Kina, whereas when they're by themselves, it's not. Did I read that wrong? Oh, no, sorry. Avala Asid, not Aval. Avala Asid Lava who Omer, but once it's referring to the future, Bilo Hamavas Lanetzach, death will be gone, and therefore there'll be no reason to mourn. Umacha Hashem Elokim Dima, and Hashem will erase all crying. May Al Kol Panim from all of the faces.
Seems that's the most popular pasuk to say at funerals.
Yeah.
But in actually church,
Yeah.
I have people end up with that.
Yeah.
Bila Hamavas Lanetzach. That's like the funeral version of Emir Hashem. Akash Baruch Hu Shvi Zocheh. Bring Shia. So that's what happens at Elavai. My Amran. What would these women say when they would do this? Amar Rav. Vaila ozla vaila chavila, oive to the one who's left, oive to the mashkin that has been returned, meaning the neshama which was provided for a short time, it's gone back. Amarava nashi de shachnitziv. We'll see these women from that shachnitziv were very intelligent and witty, and so they had all these different phrases. If I mess them up, you'll catch me, Rabbi, in the English. Amr Hachi, they would say the following: Vaila ozla vaila chavila, same thing we just said. V'amarava nashi de shachnitziv amran. God garma mikaka, the bone will be taken from the jaw. The nimte maya leantichi, and the water will go back into the kettle. Again,
they kind of think of the neshama as flowing
back.
Another place. Okay.
V'amarava nishid shachtiv amran. They would say for an avel atof v'kasu turi, the wrap and cover the mountain. Devarami uvaravravihu. It's a great. I'm not really even sure what that means. Davarami, a great son or a great grandson.
Sorry, I can't help. I'm behind, and I forgot my Steinfeld, so I just.
Oh, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
Don't matter.
Yeah.
All right, you'll take a look at English. See what it says.
Yeah.
V'amar Rava Nashi the Shachnatziv Amran Shiur la de Milsa levarchurin de Shlimus Vadei, means that you lend a cloak, right? You lend a cloak, like for Tachrichin, levarchurin is better than to a free man is better than the Shlimus Vadei. To see his wealth depleted. What it's basically saying, a person who's wealthy would prefer to die than to lose his wealth. The Amar Rava Nashi the Shachnatziv Amran, they would say, Rohit v'nafal ama'abra, a person who runs and falls on the bridge, the zufta yazif, and he still needs to borrow money, meaning it's referring to a person who makes himself nuts for parnasa, going all over the place. He falls over himself for godless. They're not necessarily eulogies, it's just statements made by these women of the Shachnatziv.
Like witticisms that they would say.
They would say, I don't even know if it means they're necessarily things we should live by, although some of them be pretty commonsensical. Nashi the Shachnatziv an Achna, my brother, Tagri Azavzagi Mibodku, merchants, Tagri. Azavzagi, upon their sales, on their business, miptiku, they're going to be checked, meaning to see how honest they were. The Amarav Nashi the Shachnatziv Amran Musa ki Musa, death is death. Uarin chibule, and the Yisurim one experiences throughout life. Chibule are like the interest. That's like the ribis that a person gets. I mean, everyone's going to die, and all the suffering you have throughout your life, that's just the interest on the loan. Tanya Hayar Meir would say the following: Tov lechas el beis avel. It's good to go to a beis avel. You have to see the pasuk inside over here. The pasuk says as follows. Where's the pasuk? Tov lechas el beis avel. Milechas el beis mishta. Better to go to a beis avel rather than to go to a beis mishta. Ba'asher hu sof kol adam, because going to a funeral or to the house of an avel, reference to someone dying, which is the end of a person. V'achayit and aliboy, which is an opportunity for a person living to take a moment to think about life, right? And the pasuk continues with ad v'achayit and aliboy. What does it mean? Dvarim shel misa. Person should think about death. The yisped yispedune. A person who makes good hesped on someone will eventually come to die and have people make masped on him. The cover, a person who helps someone become buried, bury someone, yikvrune, will he himself be buried. The tayin, a person who praises someone, yitanune, will be praised also in hesped. The yadal, a person who cries out, yadalune, will raise up the voice, will have others' voices raised up for him when he dies. No, it means someone who doesn't raise himself up, someone who is humble. Yadlune will have others cry for him by his levaya. T'chsiv, like the pasuk says, Kitov amar lach alei hine. You see, it's good for you to go up. Go up implies that beforehand you were low, and therefore it's better for a person to be humble. Rabbi Yishmael's sons died. Nichnasu Dalid's Kanim lenachmo. Talid's Kanim, 4 of his chashav rebbeim basically came to be menachem. Reb Tarfon, Reb Yosi Aglili, Reb Elazar ben Azari, Reb Akiva. Amar lehem Reb Tarfon. Reb Tarfon. Reb Tarfon said to the group, "De'u shechacham gadolhu." This Reb Yishmael, the father, the children who died, he's an Adam Gadol, he's a Chacham Gadol, who Baki Ba'agados, he's a Talmud Chacham. Al Yikones Echad Mikem L'Soich Divrei Chaveru. Don't interrupt anyone else with any new ideas. He'll figure it out. Meaning, basically, you're not going to pull one over on him. So when you make your drushes now, make sure your drushes are nice and clean. Say good things. Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva said, "V'ani Achron, I want to go last." Meaning, they're all going to say Divrei Hesped through drushes to Rabbi Yishmael on the loss of his children, and he says, "I want to go last." And he was saying it as an anivus, meaning he was allowing the rest of them to say their shtickle Torah, and then whatever wasn't said, he'll say at the end.
It's anivus, but it's also brave. Like he's not worried.
He's not worried that they're going to say something that he can't say. Yeah. Pasuk Rabbi Yishmael started off himself, and this is where they bring a raya from here to the idea that when you go to the house of an elder, you always let the elder start Torah first. Pasuk Rabbi Yishmael v'Amar, he said, Rabu Avanosov Tachfu Avelov. Right? He's talking about himself, that he had many Averas. Tachfuhu Avelov, and he had both of his sons, right? Tachfu Avelov, that he had multiple Avelas, says he triach Rabosov, Pamrishona Ushnia, and because of that, his Rebbeim, all of these Chash people had to come not only visit him for the first son, but now second son. And that was how he started his introduction. Then Reb Tarfon V'Amar, so Reb Tarfon responded by saying, V'achechem kol beis Yisrael yivku es hasreifa. my brothers, all of Klal Yisrael, cry over the Sreifa. Which is what it's talking about over there. And here it does not mean chas v'shalom that they didn't do any mitzvahs. It's just that there's only one recorded mitzvah that they did, which was what that Aharon they brought the blood to Aaron Akayin, to the Bnei Aaron. Sorry, the Bnei Aharon Nadav and Avihu brought Aaron Akayin the blood to sprinkle for the karbanos. So you see, they only had one mitzvah mentioned in the Torah, and yet Kach they got this whole big avelus of Achichin Kol Beis Yisrael is Yifku as Esreifa. So surely Banav Shel Rabbi Shmuel, meaning who did so many mitzvahs, Alachas Kamba v'Kamba, that they should be mourned in an appropriate manner. Nana Rabbi Yossi Aguili, he went next. Amar v'Sabtu Loi Kol Yisrael v'Kavro also. Right, the pasuk says they mourned, they were maspid him, they eulogized him, all of Klal Yisrael, and they buried him. V'Halo Dvarim Kal v'Chaymer. Uma Avia ben Yeravam. Avia ben Yeravam, who himself wasn't such a great guy. He was the son of Yeravam, but Shaloi Asa Ela Davar Echad Toiv. He only did one good thing. The Sliv Bey Ya'an Nimtza by Davar Toiv. He only did one good thing. It doesn't say what the Davar that he did over here. It just says that he did one thing. It was because of that Kach he got this great hesped. Banav Shal Rabbi that he's also going to get. Obviously, it's a kol shekain. He should get even a better hesped. So my davar toiv. What's the thing that he did? Reb Zeir, Reb Chanina, Reb Chanina bar Papa. Chad Amar Mishmarta Yivala Reg. We know that his father Yeravam was very jealous of what was going on down in Malchus Yehuda, so he set up these sort of like posts that would prevent people from being Oil Regel. They didn't want people from Malchus Yisrael to go into Malchus Yehuda to see how good things are over there. Different, so therefore, they have to. On hard reason. Right, exactly, right. Mm-hmm. So what did they do? He did this one good thing he would himself the Oil Regel. See, he was Bittel Mishmarta Oil Regel, so he had post on his own that he just let go. And so not only did he allow people to go past his post, but he himself went to be Oil Regel. The Chad Amar, and the other one is Shebittel Pardesos. He actually was mevatel all of the Pardesos, which is not clear because in the Gemara, I believe we learned earlier that someone else had taken them down. So it could just be he was mevatel some of them. Shebittel Pardesos, Shahoshi V'Rav Ma'aviv Al Adrachim Shelo Ya'alu Yisrael L'Regel. Fine. Or it's just a machlokas that this Gemara then, but then it's it could be. Then Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah said the following: B'Shalom Tamus, in peace you shall die. U'b'misrafos avosecha, who are Malachim Harishonim, the kings, you will be burnt up along with them. Asher hayu lefanecha, that came before you. Ken yisrafulach will also happen for you. Meaning it was a chashava ma'imit for Avelis. V'halod dvarim kal v'chaymer. U'matzit kio melech Yehuda. And here, of course, Tzidkiyahu Melech is not referring to only doing one mitzvah. It means Tzidkiyahu Melech did more than one mitzvah. But amongst the many mitzvahs he did, one of the things he did was Shehel Yirmiyahu Minatit. Yirmiyahu Hanavi was thrown when they heard that he was talking about the coming Churban. They threw him in a pit, and he was going to die. And Tzidkiyahu Melech came to save him. Kach Banav Shel Rabbi Shmuel Alachas Kama v'Kam. Then Rabbi Akiva finally said, on that day, Yigdal HaMisped Yerushalayim, the hesped of Yerushalayim will become great. Kemisped Hadar Drimon, like the misped of Hadar Drimon, Bebikas Megiddo. And we know that Dar Drimon never occurred in Bikas Megiddo. This is a Gemara that came up earlier. That we had. Hadar Drimon is the name. The hay is included. Yeah. And you said that to me when I read it last time also. Hadar Drimon. Correct. Thank you. Rav Yosef Ilmole Targume, the High Kra. Had we not had the Targum, Rav Yosef was a big Targum. Lehavi Yadona Maikamri wouldn't know what's going on here. Meaning, the time of that pasuk is be'idnoha, in that time. Yazgi mispeda Yerushalayim. There will be a great hesped in Yerushalayim. And what will it be? Kimispeda de Achav bar Amri. It'll be like the hesped of Achav. The Katel Yosei Hadadrimain who killed him. Hadad Rimon. Put together, it's Hadad Rimon. Hadad Rimon. Oh, so I'm reading it Drimon, right? Hadad Rimon. The Katel Yosei Hadad Rimon, who killed him. Bar Tavrimon, who was the son of Tavrimon, which makes sense. Hadad was the son of Tav, basically. And Rimon was like their last name. Like a family name or something like that, yeah. Ukimispe de Yoshio bar Amon, and it was also like the of Yoshio, the Kotel Yosei Paro Chagira, and Paro, the Chagir, the lame person, who killed him bebikas megidai, and therefore that's how you understand the pasuk. But regardless, what do you see? That a great hesped was going to happen for these people, which is referring to Achav
I
at
think we
least.
call him Par Necho also. Par Necho, Necho is Hebrew for Chagira. He's referred to as Par Necho.
Right.
It's lame.
Right. I mean, in Hebrew it means lame.
Yeah, in Hebrew, yeah. In the Tanakh, I think they call him Par Necho.
Okay. Yeah, no, my nach is not that great.
I don't know what that will either, but you hear about Par Necho periodically.
Uma Achav Melech Yisrael Shaloi Oser Ela Davar Echad Tov. Achav was not that great. Oser Ela Davar Echad Tov. He only did one good thing. Dichsiv v'Hamelech Hayamabed B'Merkava Nochach Haram. This was when he was dying. He didn't show his wounds. That wasn't the actual good thing that he did. I think the good thing that he did we'll see in a minute.
They're all sort of saying these people are famous for one good thing, but your sons, Rabbi Yishmael, were famous for so many things.
And the Rishonim do speak out over here also that all of these things that they did were on some level litovas klal Yisrael.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just that they did something good. These were things that maybe even had like l'dairei dairis an effect. Being people being able to go be oil regel and different things. Kach banav shel bishmal achas kam v'kam. Rabba bar Mari. Ksiv baby Tzidkio, it says by Tzidkio Amelech b'Shalom Thomas that'll die in peace. But how could that be? Ksiv, it also says as Eini Tzidkio Iver that his eyes were taken out. So how could he say he died in peace if his eyes were taken out? Amalei Hachem Rabbi Yochanan Shemeis Nebuchadnezzar b'Yom. The peaceful part of it was that Nebuchadnezzar died before him. He was able to see Nebuchadnezzar die. But in Chanami, maybe his death wasn't that peaceful. V'Amar Rava l'Rabba bar Mari Ksiv baby Yoshio. It says by Yoshio Melech Lechein Hineni Osifcha Alavosecha. Then esafta el kfurosecha b'shalom, that you'll be taken also in peace. Uksiv, and it also says v'yoru hayorim lemelech Yoshio, that his body was filled with arrows. So that doesn't sound very peaceful. Or Yehuda Marav she'asauhu kekavra, meaning that he was so filled with holes that he looked like a sieve. Amar lehachem Rabbi Yochanan explained shaloi charav beis hamikdash biyamav, right? Biyameyav, yeah. He didn't see the Beis Hamikdash be destroyed in his life, so therefore it meant that he died peacefully. This is the halacha of what we saw earlier, that one should not open and start to be menachem, a mourner, until the mourner starts talking. Shenemar, the pasuk says, "Achrei kein pasach Eov espio." It was only afterwards that Eov opened his mouth. So he spoke first v'hadar, and only then vayan Eliphaz hatimani. Eliphaz then responded. So you see,
there could be like several days of silence,
and then
he speaks up, and then everyone has to just be quiet.
Amar Rabavo says, "Minayin la'avel shemesa berosh." How do we know that an avel sits at the head of the table? And I have to assume this means, he's allowed to have meals. I mean, he can have people, so he sits at the rosh of the table. Shenemar, the pasuk says. And if I butcher the nekudas here, you tell me. Ivchar darkam, you'll choose your way, their ways. The ashev rosh, and sit at the head. The eshkon kemelach begedud, and like a king or general of an army, a king of an army. I will dwell, or he'll dwell. Kasher avelim yenachem, like a mourner, like the mourners are consoled. So, which sounds like, if you're not paying too much attention, it sounds like what it's saying is that the Avelim are the ones who are being menachem, and they're the ones who are, right, they're the ones who are sitting at the Rosh, Veshev Rosh. As the Gemara, Yenachem achrini mashma. Yenachem is mashma that it's going on the ones visiting the mourner, that they're the ones who sit at the Rosh. He says, no, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Yenachem, with a chirik, meaning that Yenachem, it's reflexive, so therefore it's referring to himself who is being consoled. Bar Zutra, Amar Mehach, he says, no, you learn it from a different pasuk. I'm not going to lie, this pasuk is not 100% clear to me what it means. But Visar Mirzach Sruchim, Mirzach is understood to mean a mar, a person who's bitter. So he's an Avel. Na'a says Sar will become like a prince, L'Sruchim, to those who are comforting him, to those that are around him. So again, you see that he sits at the head. How do we know that a chasen sits at the head of the table? Shenemar kechasen yikahin pe'er, like a chasan, yikahin, a kayin pe'er. They are compared in their glory, let's say. Ma kayin berosh, av chasen berosh. So too, a chasen goes at the head. A kayin gufim minol. And how do we know that a kayin goes at the head? The Tana B'Rei Yishmael. The Kiddush, the pasuk says, lechol davar shebekdusha, leftayach rishon, levarach rishon, litlaman ayafa rishon. All of these things, he gets to go first. Amar B'Chanina, kashi yitzias neshama men haguf. A person's neshama leaving his body is no different than kitzipuri bibei haveshet, would be like taking a knotted rope and roping it and like pulling it through like a hook on a ship or something like that.
All of the types of death, we're envisioning the neshama being pulled out. So the hair from milk is like the best way because it's almost
nothing.
Tearing, right?
Taking the needle out.
Yeah, each one is tearing more and more and ripping and torturing.
And here we're already talking.
Yeah.
Now this Gemara doesn't bring it, but there's other Gemaras that talk about how it's like taking thorns from like a cotton, something like where it's literally like it can't go.
It just rips it.
Yeah, rips it. Yeah.
Or a rope that's attached to some kind of.
It's like unripe grapes or something. You pull the stems, they don't come out properly. They pull all the fruit with it. Kitsipuri bepi haveshet, like the knotted rope and like this type of. You can imagine on the side of a boat you have the things you'd wrap the ropes around, but if you have a knotted rope, it's designed to hold it there. So pulling it through there. Literally, but like it's trying to get a baby out of a woman. It's Rabbi Yochanan Amar, no, it's kipituri b'pivesh, a different type of rope in that type of hook. Fine. Remember, Levi bar Chisa, hanifter min ames, a person who is leaving a mace. Lo yomer lo yilech lishalom. Don't say go towards shalom. Rather, ela lech b'shalom, go in peace. Hanifter min achai. Whereas if a person's, saying goodbye to a person who's alive, lo yomer lo lech b'shalom, go in peace. And again, logic says that is how you should speak. And nifter min, we're going to bring it from Sukkah.
We have a concept that we make progress, like lit, while mesim are stable.
Yeah, well, so bishalom means like it's more a statement of the status you'll be, not so much where you're going. Right, a holech, you're not a holech anymore. Right, and nifter min ameis lo yomer lo yilech l'shalom. How do we know that? Ela lech bishalom. Shenemar. Ve'at is going by Avram Avinu. Hashem says to Avram Avinu, "Ve'at tovei elav v'secha bishalom." You're going to be buried, and it'll be bishalom. So we learn from there. And you were speaking to when you're leaving a mace, the language you use is bishalom. Anifter min achai. A person is leaving a chai, a regular person who's alive. Lo yomer lo yilech bishalom. Don't tell him that he should go in peace, but rather ela lech lishalom, go towards peace. Meaning your life should be peaceful. David was speaking to Avshalom. He said, Lech b'shalom, and Avshalom was not dead, right? Halach v'nitla, and he became dead, meaning he got hanged.
It was a hint.
Yeah, it was just letting him know. Yisro, Shamar LaMoshe, Yisro said to Moshe Rabbeinu, Lech l'shalom, halach v'hitzliach. It's interesting, we have to bring both. You could have just brought Moshe and Yisro. But you see that lech b'shalom is good and lech b'shalom is a problem. Halach v'yitzlech. Reb Levi said, "Kol hayotzim mibeis hakneses lebeis hamedrash." Obviously, with this masechta, with this parak, they didn't want to finish off with halach v'nitla, right? So kol hayotzim mibeis hakneses lebeis hamedrash, lebeis hamedrash lebeis hakneses. Whether a person's going from shul to beis medrash, from beis medrash to shul, meaning you're going michayil el chayil from one good thing to another. Zoichim mekabel pnei hashchina. He's going to merit to receive the shechina shenemer, like it says in the pasuk, Yelchu michayil el chayil. You go from strength to strength. Yirah el Elokim b'tzion will be seen by Hashem. In Tzion, Amar of Chia bar Ashi Amarav, Talmidei Chachamim. Ein lehem menucha. They have no peace. Afilu lo'olam haba, even in the world to come. And it does not mean here that they'll have tsar. What it means is that the milchamta shel Torah, with the fire of learning Torah, which they do in this world, will continue even after. Afilu lo'olam haba, shenemar yelchu michayil el chayil. A person should go from one strength to another. Yirah el Elokim b'tzion. He'll be seen by Hashem b'tzion, meaning he'll learn Torah with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hadron Allah, ve'elu megalchin v'slik olam mesechta Moed Kattan. Shkoyach. Mitzvah Hashem, shbizayich v'misayim. Many more mesechtas together. And
big ones, small ones. When my mother was an Avel.
Kevin.
Shkoyach Kalman.
Whenever we face this problem, Vivian and Donald,
I can hear you meeting.
What can I tell you?
whether it is loaded or not.
Can he hear us? No.
No. See, I need to hear because they might say, "What do you think, Ken?" So if they do that,
The same pal.
I don't know.
Okay. So I'm gonna hang up. Have a great day. See you tonight.
It will take the same tunnel, same path, but that for that just configured differently in VPN routers.